off of nuclear herbs when it comes to stuff that's on my mind and makes the hair. I guess I've got a few hairs left on my head. They turn upwards and cold chills up my spine, and I'm all of a twitter and a flutter about this whole President's Working Group report called "Strengthening American Leadership in Digital Financial Technology," which is a mouthful. But what do you think? Can we dig into this? Because I think that's probably a better focus for our time in the communities.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So that's I don't know how many people realize what came out last week. It was the White House paper. It's essentially a policy position. You remember a couple of months ago when Trump got into office, one of the things he did was he appointed Paul Atkins, he appointed David Sachs, and basically set them off to go come up with a revised crypto policy from getting rid of we're going to consider everything as security and we're going to test it under Howey, which made no sense, and nobody had any idea what was going on. Nobody had any idea how to build anything. The SEC wasn't responsive to anybody's requests. All they did was just tell them to go screw themselves, and then sued them despite actors trying to act in good faith. So Trump realized that wasn't going to work anymore, and it really didn't work even when it was working. So the policy paper got put together over the last 6 months, and Papa and I are going to go through some of the more interesting points of that policy paper. Now, keep in mind that the policy right now it's not legislation, it's not enacted, it's not a regulation yet, but it kind of is here's what we in the White House think future legislation and future regulation should incorporate.
Well, they specifically use the word recommendations.
Yes.
So it's a thought, it's a summary of the landscape of the regulatory bodies of how they've been overreaching until now, and keeping things nebulous and ambiguous, and keeping the industry completely confused and afraid of legal battles, of which we as a community have just come out of one successfully. Thank you very much to you, your hard work, Nuclear Herbs, on that as well. But also it breaks things down into, like you said, a few baskets that are supposed to start getting things into focus. So it's, the taxonomy, the digital asset ecosystem as a whole, market structure, how it applies to banking, stable coins, illicit finance, and finally taxation. So, and what we're going to examine are a few things that we've actually read from the 166-page brief, and how they apply specifically to our ecosystem, namely HEX and PulseChain.
Yep, and none of this is, of course, legal advice. It's just just kind of our own opinions from having both read this behemoth document and kind of what our takeaways were from it. So we don't really, again, know what the legislation is going to be proposed, what it actually looks like, or what regulations are going to be drafted out of that legislation. So, this is our best guess at this moment, but it does list some very significant policy points that are going to, if they are implemented in the way that it looks like they might be, boy, is that going to be good for our system, our ecosystem, and crypto in general. But
yeah. So let's dive right in. First of all, and I'm sorry, before we start, interesting breaking news: the CFTC may have a chair soon. Finally, it looks like it. I didn't realize that it was kind of in a stalemate situation in Congress, but it looks like the CFTC will have a new chair. And
good.
That chair has also been vocal. Strangely enough, you're familiar with the Storm case. You have lectured me on this, and maybe you can tell the viewers what that's about. But apparently, this new CFTC chair, when asked, is going to specifically advise the DOJ to not enforce Section 1960, which is the one that they caught Tornado Cash on.
Yeah, Roman Storm, who just got convicted, I believe, under that. I think that was one of the three claims, or the three counts against him, the criminal counts against him, and then two of them ended in a mistrial, kind of a hung jury thing. But the third one he was convicted on was, I believe, the 1960 violation. I'm pretty sure. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure. And which is essentially now completely contrary to the DOJ's position, as announced as of this morning. The DOJ has now said that if you put software out there in the wild and somebody misuses it, and you had no intent like to design it specifically for people to misuse it, then we're not going to come after you. We're going to go after the bad guys who misuse the product, which is exactly
what a novel thought. Yeah,
right. Think about it. Like, I mean, this is the same idea as saying, like, if you're a gun manufacturer or a car manufacturer and you put it out there in the wild and you create a good, you create a product and somebody misuses it, they're not going to sue Ford every time a drunk driver runs over somebody with an F-150, and they're not going to, sue. I mean, they tried with the whole Bushmaster lawsuits, and I think it was Bushmaster, where they tried to sue gun manufacturers for people misusing the gun and shooting people. But this is the right way to do things. You hold the bad actors accountable, and you can't predict anytime when somebody's going to misuse your product. I mean, if I'm Cuisinart and I make forks, I can't predict that somebody's going to stab somebody with a fork like reasonably, and I shouldn't be held responsible for that. And the government shouldn't be running around banning forks either. So,
and unless you label it forks for your stabbing pleasure.
Yes, if you market it in that particular way, yes, go stab someone today. Right? Maybe you got a problem. But
Martha, get the stabbing set out. Okay, so anyway, all right. So moving right along. I think that if I can be so bold as to step into the first chapter that is of interest, the actual first chapter, true chapter of this working group report has to do with what is the technology, and it's basically built for like Maxine Waters to really understand what the hell a Bitcoin is, and we'll glance right over that and go into something that's important, which is taxonomy and who has jurisdiction under certain types of tokens. Taxonomy, of course, is the definition and classification of assets, whether they're going to be securities or not securities. And my understanding is that the new approach is that, yes, a number of things could be securities, but most of them are not. They're mostly commodities. And if they're securities, it's not the death knell to them as it once was, being able to be sued for, taking part in a unregistered security offering, which would land you in hot water in court with the SEC. Now there's kind of a period of amnesty, or a road to coming in from the rain and the cold and being able to register yourself under the SEC. But before that happens, mostly commodities would be taken care of by the CFTC rather than the SEC. Is that a good summary, or what else would you like to launch off to in that chapter?
Yeah, that's pretty accurate. I think, like, just like we classify animals into mammals and reptiles and everything else, I think the U.S. government has realized that there's enough different types of crypto out there that we need to have some sort of structured classification system for them, and rules that apply to each one of them, so that if you're a dev that wants to build a product in a very specific way and offer certain features, whether you're going to trigger some sort of registration requirement under the SEC, or whether or not you can incorporate a design that just goes straight into registration under the CFTC, which is historically been a hell of a lot easier. Nobody. If you're selling corn or pork bellies or whatever, or any other commodity, it's a hell of a lot easier to do that, and there's a lot less reporting requirements for you than if you're registering and offering a security, for some company that's launching or whatever. So it'll be nice for devs to have a clear roadmap, and if they're designing something that's going to run afoul of some regulation or may get them trapped in an SEC net, it'll give them the opportunity, if they're paying attention, to steer clear of it, or maybe, write that function out of their code, or change it in such a way where it doesn't trigger whatever negative repercussion or reporting requirements or whatever. And I think it's been so badly needed for the last few years, because we had no idea what a security was, and to be honest with you, we still don't, because these things haven't been officially announced, and the structure for each set of digital assets or category of digital assets has not been even announced in the policy paper. But all we know so far is that Howie's dead, and good riddance to him. So it looks like we should see, I would guess, based on this policy paper, I find it difficult to imagine that they didn't come up with at least some proposed corresponding legislation that was handed to Congress and say, hey, this is ideally what we would like to see. So get working on it. Whenever you guys get back from vacation, which I'm not sure is until September sometime, but we'll have to go through the normal legislative process. And, it'll take forever, of course, because that's what legislation does. And then once the legislation defines classes of digital assets, they will, and typically in legislation, if everybody doesn't follow it that often, like it'll direct the CFTC or the SEC or some other agency or whatever to design rules and implement those regulations. And I'll go through that process real briefly with everybody, but I'm going to throw it back to Papa for a minute to add anything else he wants to here.
Well, yeah, I mean, before you do that, the paper kind of takes a stab at classifying things. It looks like there's this new, easier to fail criteria, kind of a Neo Howie test, if you like, where 99% of all of the things out there will fail and not be securities. I think that it had to do about decentralization, adequately out there in the wild after primary distribution. So all these things kind of play really well into the foundation, the fundamentals of HEX primarily. And then, of course, there's the receiving of HEX rewards, PulseChain airdrops. None of those would be considered securities. So that's great. And then for stakers, the new embracing of DeFi technology that the paper promotes would also say that staking rewards, where we are specifically concerned, the tokens get burned and then you create them yourself from the contract again on the outside, on the back end, that too would not even fall into the safe harbor offered, loosely under the SEC oversight. And then validators, I think a lot of ways the validators are insulated from any dealings in non-security digital assets as well, which is great. And finally, developers, we're seeing this 1960 thing. The DOJ is not going to enforce it, and the CFTC intends not to recommend enforcement. Then I think that our developers can breathe the free air of the new world. Do I have all that right? And would you like to just continue?
Yeah, I think your read on that is kind of the same as mine here. The devil is always in the details, of course. So we're gonna have to wait and see, what the legislation, goes eventually looks like. But if I love the direction we're pointed in right now. It's very, very clear. If you take nothing else from this entire 160-page policy paper, it's very clear that the Trump administration does not want to cede its position as America's position as the essentially the crypto development capital of the world. He wants the U.S. to be taking the lead in crypto and all kinds of aspects of crypto, including DeFi, which I found very refreshing, because typically you don't get government letting people do what they want more often than not. It's they try to kill off that portion of it, but we seem to be headed in the route where towards the route where the government is not just recognizing that's self-custody and DeFi are things, but actively encouraging the development of those types of things and encouraging people to self-custody their own assets, which is holy cow, what a 180 from a year ago if we'd had the same conversation.
Totally. You said that you wanted to talk about the criteria, the yes no for being able to be considered for. Pass the mic over to me. What was it? Your next thought there on that one before we close it out?
I was just going to kind of just briefly go through like how how legislation that gets passed is essentially the Congress is going to pass something and the president's going to sign it into law, and it's going to have directions to agencies to go implement the legislation. And this is kind of what happens in most legislation when they direct agencies to do stuff. The agency gets hold of the legislation and reads it and says, within the next 90 days, 180 days, whatever it is, I've got to come up with a proposed rule in how to implement this legislation with respect to what is what's going to be the criteria for a commodity, what's going to be the criteria for security. And it's not going to be Howie anymore. It's going to be something that people can understand and know clearly when they're driving inside the lines and when they're driving outside the lines.
Yep.
So the short version of all of that, and it's something that we all need in this community to pay attention to, is there's going to be a proposed rule drafted. It does have the actual text, the reason for it, the legal authority for it, and then it explains kind of like the effects on people, economy, builders, businesses, whatnot. And that is published in the Federal Register. If you've never heard of the Federal Register, good for you, but you're probably going to have to start paying attention to it at some point in the next year or two, especially if you're building anything on PulseChain.
Right, and as a community, we're going to be able to rally people and get on point, and then provide our analysis, our answers to it, and comment on it appropriately. Correct?
100%. So the minute it gets on the Federal Register, you have usually a notice and comment period starts. And you've seen this in other things. I think Richard tweeted out something last year when there was some rule being proposed, or maybe it was even 2 years ago now, and told everybody to submit comments on it. It's kind of the same idea. It is the same idea. It's exactly the same idea. So you will be able to read the proposed rule, submit comments to the agency. You can support it, you can oppose it, you can suggest changes. Agencies are by law required to consider all the comments that are submitted. They can't ignore them. And then once the comment period ends, they will take all the comments and review them. And if there are good suggestions, they may get implemented. If there are, some of the things that you may want to note in legislation or in your comment, if you're going to comment on something, you can say like, hey, this is over. Your proposal is it's over-regulation. You don't need to put in, these specific requirements in order to achieve the goal of the legislation. You can do it leaner and speedier. And so therefore we recommend that you pull these pieces out that are overly burdensome or whatever, and you still get to accomplish the exact same goal that Congress wanted for you.
Right. So we can't be complacent on this. Even if we want to say, hey, job well done, you got to understand that there's other people that could throw a monkey wrench into the whole thing. They can comment from the banking sector, for example, could say, or rather the previous old guard banking sector, the bad people in Congress could have their cronies send 100, comments. So we've got to neutralize that by good, solid support for things we like. Is that correct?
That is exactly right. So if I were you and or anybody listening, and you're a dev and you're building anything on on blockchain or on PulseChain, or blockchain in general for that matter, just go ahead and set alerts on the Federal Register for things like digital assets or DeFi or something like that, and you'll get notified when a proposed rule contains those terms, so that you can take a look and read it and go, wow, this is really good for us. I should submit a comment saying how much we like it, or this thing really sucks and it'll kill our industry, because there's a whole bunch of unintended consequences I can see from it, and we need to rally the troops and submit a whole bunch of comments. So
Right.
Yep.
So look, we're going to enter the lightning round now, because we got 4 more chapters to blow through, and I think we can knock the next one out really super quick. This one's about banking, and it simply, well, I guess my summary is that it acknowledges that there was Operation Choke Point 2.0. It's no longer just a catchphrase. They refer to it as a known fact, and they say it's done, it's ended. People are not going to be debanked for doing things in crypto. Businesses can now actually apply and not be, turned away simply because they have the whiff of crypto or DeFi in their business brief. Developers are encouraged by banking organizations to explore innovative banking technologies that they're going to offer to those developers, so that they can actually get supported. And banks themselves can do things like hold assets and offer premiums and or staking rewards in the near future. Do you think that that's about the best summary that you can pull from it as well?
Yeah, that is a completely concise version of it. Do you remember I do not remember what it's called now, but there were states that had to implement their own banking rules in order to deal with crypto projects, because the feds would withhold some sort of approval, or Federal Reserve
Right.
banks would withhold some. That's
Yeah.
gone too. So that it's essentially, we're done. The White House, from a White House policy standpoint, the banks are done trying to kill crypto, which is fantastic. So there's going to be a lot more leeway, a lot more freedom that banks have with respect to collateralized limits on things, being able to lend on, with respect to, they don't have to, I don't think they have to have dollar for dollar anymore in reserve assets with respect to crypto. There's a whole bunch of stuff in this document. I don't remember it all off the top of my head, but it is completely worth a look if you are going to be in a position where your DApp is going to need to somehow interact with the conventional banking system. It's worth taking a look at, and it's also worth, again, setting alerts in the Federal Register.
Right on. Okay, jumping to the next section, which is stablecoins and payments. And you said not dollar for dollar on crypto assets. However, these banks are now going to get approved to offer, and so several of them have already announced that they're going to offer dollar-backed stablecoins in opposition to the concept of a CBDC. And the committee certainly is against CBDCs, just like Trump is, and we are.
Yep.
And then those stablecoins issued by banks without the ability, hopefully, to be surveilling you and or turning them off without good reason, if at all, that's going to be able to be free flowing into DeFi, which should bolster liquidity in PulseChain, which should kind of create better liquidity for trading pairs and liquidity for HEX and PulseChain. So it's kind of a big one. It doesn't seem like much, but liquidity inflows and ease to get your money in as a digital asset, as a stable coin, to come into DeFi, to bridge over and to a number of chains, especially our beautiful layer 1 PulseChain. That's kind of opened up the floodgates, or should very soon. Do you read that as well?
Yeah, everything except the very soon part. And I should clarify that for everybody here.
Okay. 2 more weeks.
Yeah, the legislation itself, Congress just doesn't move fast. I mean, they can't agree to change the toilet paper in the bathroom of the Capitol without like 6 weeks of discussions and committees. So
That's Maxine Waters' committee, isn't it?
I believe so. Yeah, let's give her that responsibility and see if it works
Yes.
out. So it'll be a little bit. It'll even if they got right on it as soon as they return from vacation, I seriously doubt you'll see anything actually passed into law probably before the end of this year. There's usually a time frame where they direct the regulatory agencies, hey, within 90 days or 120 days or 180 days, you have to implement, or you have to publish your first proposed rule. And then there's the 90-day notice of comment period, and then there's the whatever period where they finalize the rule, publish it, and then there's usually a time frame before it actually goes into effect. Like, so 180 days from today or 90 days from today, this rule will take effect. So if you add up all of that time frame, if you're expecting this bull run to end in Q1, Q2 next year, don't expect any really substantial legislation or regulation to be in effect before that time frame. So just want to clarify the really quick part.
Yeah. No, I use quick in like my favorite thing to watch is not horse racing. It's snail racing. So, in that sense, I know that the gears of the higher up even the executive branch are very, very slow, and then Congress makes it like molasses in February, is it? But at least it's in the right direction. All I want is me personally, I want things to kind of come into some hard and fast, solidified law by the end of Trump's second term. Is that reasonable?
Oh, completely. Yeah, I think so. And I think that all along the way, as we start seeing the draft legislation, the draft regulations, things like that along the way, we're going to see where this country's headed with respect to, what rules we're trying to make for DeFi and for stablecoins and whatnot. And that positivity should translate into, new money coming into crypto, because they're not going to be afraid of the rules that are coming downstream, right? Like when somebody wanted to put something out there before, they were concerned that, oh my God, what if the SEC sues me because they now think it's a security? Now I got to consider that before I decide to launch or whatever. But if we kind of know from the draft rules what everything's going to look like in the future, and it's probably not going to change all that much, radically much from what the proposed legislation or proposed regulation draft rules are to the final rules. We're gonna feel a sense of certainty that we've never felt before in crypto, and I think that's going to be a positive sentiment and draw a lot of people in. And that has a side effect too of if normies who think crypto is just crazy internet money that has no value, but now we see the government taking it seriously. That's going to bring an entirely different sentiment towards us too. So,
right on.
I look forward to a lot of this.
Cool. Jumping on to section 4 out of 5, countering illicit finance. Now, this to me was deliciously vague in that it pays lip service to the people in Congress that accused us all of being, bad guys dealing in drugs and things like that. Trafficking and money laundering and all this other crap, which I'm positive that no one in our community is actually doing. And my friends over at the DEA, in my past life, I mix with a lot of them. I keep in contact with them. They would all love if every drug dealer dealt in cryptocurrency, because it's just so easy for them to find out where it's going from on the public ledger, see timestamps, wallet addresses. The case is very easy to make, and then of course they sweat these guys out and are able to confiscate it all, which is how the U.S. government amassed their big crypto fortune.
Correct.
So they in this brief, they kind of define that in kind of a, I don't know, it's kind of an easy way for us to find out that we're not responsible for a lot of things that will be, possibly fingers pointed at us by the DOJ. We don't have to worry about these things. Holders of HEX are effectively protected under this idea of self-custody being very important. So we don't have to worry about any of that. The staking mechanism is going to be clarified under BSA regulations and obligations, that we don't have to be responsible for the AML or KYC or CFT rules based on how many bits and bytes pass through illicit wallets and things like that. That's all going to be, it's all going to be done away with. It's going to be very clear that it's just between you and the contract. There's nobody in between. And finally, validators. Again, this one was probably the biggest risk, is that someone would say, well, you're going to be having to be a money transfer, a regulated and verified and registered money transfer agent, just because you're receiving rewards from the chain and you're helping to bolster the security of the chain. But still, it's possible that the nodes themselves are connecting up with other nodes, and that could be problems. So you have to AML all of those other owners of all those other nodes. That is going to be done away with as well. So I'm kind of happy about this section. Primarily, it makes me very, very happy that these guys get the points, get our pain points. And again, the developers also, this 1960 rule is going to be done away with. Therefore, they're protected as well. Anything I missed on that section?
No, I think we just have to recognize, like, if you read this policy paper, it is very clear that the previous administration was operating under the completely misguided sense that anybody in crypto must be doing it because they're trying to evade some law here or some law there or something like that. Therefore, we're just going to assume everybody who uses crypto has criminal intent or is, somehow nefarious. And this paper basically says the exact opposite. We're just going to assume that everybody who's in DeFi is doing it because they have the right to self-custody, they have the right to their own assets, they have the right to control whatever they want. And, we're not going to bother with you. Essentially, we're not going to make any rules to mess with you unless you start getting into the world of criminal activity, in which case, we're going to focus the negative consequences on you directly, the bad actor, rather than whoever put the software out there. And I couldn't be more positive about that sentiment. So I'm exceptionally happy about that. And about where that's going.
Right on. And the final portion that we should cover, just to kind of summarize this 166-page brief, one that is near and dear to my heart and keeps me up at night, and is basically the chess match that we all should be playing with the IRS, and that is taxation. Effectively, a few of you that, or not more than a few of you, hopefully all of you that are taking care of your little micro transactions through something like Coinly online every year, and overwhelming the IRS with all of the microtransactions and gas fees and same wallets that you own, the back and forths there, and your cost basis and your adjusted cost basis and your pros, and all of this stuff is going to get incredibly, apparently they're advising this to get very simplified, and all of the microtransactions from your validators, when you get little rewards, will be categorized as de minimis receipts of digital assets. To remind you, you can think of mini-me. So all these little mini-me transactions that are coming through, you don't have to spend the highest tier of accounting for Coinly every year. You can simply minimize that to the lowest tier and say, hopefully, did I dispose of that asset or did I not dispose of this asset? That's one of the things that they're proposing, is that You may not have any compliance burden for reporting if you did not sell the asset or trade it into another asset. Even asset to asset transactions are up for debate. But I will take just not having to, you know, hopefully pay any taxes on gas fees, but to have to report them alone would be a huge burden relief for the average validator. What do you think?
Yeah, I think this is more of a just a practical realization by the government that hey, listen, like we have 20% of our citizens owning crypto, and it's going to be 50% in the next couple of years. And if every if there are 25,000 DeFi projects offering different things, rewards, staking, whatever, just the burden of for reporting all of that on a citizen is insane in and of itself. And then when you take that and you say, how many auditors do we have left after Trump fired them at the IRS? And they're like, wait, we got 15,000 auditors left or whatever like that. How the hell, just as a practical matter, could they reasonably audit people who are receiving, if you're a validator and you're receiving 20 pulse every 15 minutes or 10 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever for attestations or something like that, and then you get block rewards and whatever, and then tips in the block rewards and and all this other stuff like that. How the hell can you do it? How can they successfully audit it? So I think there's a practical realization where the de minimis has to make sense. And I think you're right. I think at worst, I think we'll see, this is just my complete speculation here, but at worst, let's say your aggregate rewards for validating and over the course of 3 months equals some number that's above the de minimis exception. You may have to, file something at some point saying, I received X amount over the last couple of months or whatever. And then, or maybe you just have to, maybe it's a quarterly statement that you have to prepare with your annual taxes. I don't know. I mean, I'm just completely guessing at this, but I think the individual day-to-day de minimis stuff, I don't see any practical way for anybody to keep track of all of that. And therefore, and I don't see any practical way for the government to audit that at scale. So, I think the government has recognized that this is a problem that's only going to get worse over time when there are more and more and more projects offering more and more different ways to earn different rewards, and they're all trickling in. If you own coin X and it pays you out like 1 hex a day, like what, and then. How are you supposed to monitor all that? How are you supposed to take care of that? And then what are you supposed to do at tax time? So I think you're right. What I would love to see, and I don't know that it's going to happen, but I would love to see 1031 exchanges for crypto.
Yep.
If you go to stablecoin, or if you go to, if you cash out, that's a taxable event, but I would love to be able to see you move one crypto to another, without having to, without triggering a taxable event in the same way we do now. So
a pass through, like you're talking about something to do. Right now, that would be like real estate, for example. If you get into a new house within 6 months of selling a house in certain states, it's like a carry through of your profit from the previous sale. Is that
the 1031? If you own real estate and you want to swap it into other real estate, then you have to identify the property within 30 or 60 days or whatever it is. And so people typically identify like 3 or 4 properties that they want in case something falls through, and then actually close on it. I think you might be right on the 6 months. I'm not entirely sure on that, but you have to like actually complete the transaction within a specified period of time, and then you can defer the capital gains on that real estate for, until you eventually sell it and don't 1031 it into another property. So I would love to see something very, very similar to that for crypto. Because eventually, like the whole idea, everybody knows this, the government knows that eventually people are going to either put money into stable coins because market goes down, or they're going to want to cash out. So they're going to be able to, get that taxable event at some point, because, nobody's going to leave their crypto in crypto forever unless they forget their seed phrase. Right.
Right. Yep.
So
And
that's yeah.
Yeah, the thing that I can't stand is, I mean, look, I lived in Silicon Valley during the high point of the bubble, during the internet boom, and I saw people that were desperate because they got stock options, and back then the tax rule was, if you get something, be it a stock option or otherwise, based on that fair market value of the time that it was signed over to you, you have a tax event. Right. So people were going nuts, like jumping out of windows, basically, because they got into a startup, they got this huge valuation, they got their stock options released after a year, and on like days after they got their stock options released, it went down by like 50%. So they're like, oh my God, I got to pay so many taxes. What the hell am I going to do? I don't even have the value anymore. The same I don't want to see for crypto. And I think a lot of people are being vocal about that. When you get a validator reward, I don't want that to hit the market and have to account for it at fair market value. I want to say, you know what? I'll take the hit based on $0 cost basis. That's fine. I'll pay the full amount. Just don't hit me for, disposition or disposal of the asset rates from top to bottom at that moment, because I don't want a tax bill, right?
Yeah, and we have to think of it. We're in our own little bubble here on PulseChain, but I mean, this applies equally to Ethereum and other chains that are proof of stake. So imagine the burden on Ethereum validators is just as great as it would be for us. So and there's a lot more of them than there are of us, right? So there's the government is going to have to take this into account. And, quite frankly, at this point, Ethereum has a much bigger voice in the regulatory arena than we do. Hopefully that will change over time. But, they are, they have the Ethereum Foundation. They're better organized, and they're better able to kind of make their voice heard. But that directly benefits us. If these type of rules get put into effect that benefit Ethereum's validators, they're definitely going to benefit our validators as well.
Nice. Well, I mean, this is the beginning, right? To bring it back down and to land our plane, I guess we could say that this is a really good step forward. It's putting things in writing. It's official. It's a roadmap for, let's say, the next 3 years to fill in gaps and to, provide a pro-innovation framework that benefits HEX and PulseChain stakeholders. It's really great recommendations. I mean, I don't see a lot of downside. We don't see a lot of sinew and skin on this skeletal type of view of what regulation will look like, but it's a damn sight better than what we had to sweat through Gensler. I mean, honestly, it's really great. It's really great to see that we're breaking through. We're validated as an industry now.
It's incredibly positive, yes.
Yeah.
And when you think about the Trump kids who own stuff in DeFi, I mean, and one of the things we have to keep in mind too is there may be a little bit more of an aggressive push to get some of this stuff done, because we have midterms coming up, and historically the party in power doesn't maintain the House during, after midterms. So there may be more of a push to get some of this legislation and regulation enacted and in place before this Congress concludes in January 1 of 2027. So let's keep an eye out for stuff.
We can always hope that the gerrymandering debate and issues that are going on now in Texas and California and possibly other states could secure the House once and for all for the rest of this president's term. Wouldn't that be glorious?
That would be fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah. Not that I'm trying to politicize this whole thing, but it wasn't my choice to make crypto a highly partisan type of debate in Congress. It wasn't anybody's desire for this. We thought that this was just the simple truth that it was going to evolve and it was going to be the next, big earth changing iteration of technology like the internet. But
Right.
no, it has to be made into a aisle left against right type of debate. And if it's going to be, then let's win it at least.
Yep, I'm fine with that.
Cool. Well, I guess we came in just about 5 minutes over time, but yeah. Do you have any closing remarks that you want to make before RHMax appears? And he does.
And he
There
does.
is.
Yeah.
Boom.
No, I'll just say, and if anybody doesn't follow Papa for, he's well worth following for his security advice on, how to keep your crypto safe, and which is going to be even more important for anybody you're onboarding right now, as we get through this next bull run. I'd much rather not see people show up and lose all their shit to some hack that could have been prevented, or some bad security practice that they had complete control over and ignored. So,
and if you ever try to tag him on X, it is at BOEHNERPAPAH. If you search for Papa Boner, you won't find him. If you search for anything else, you won't find him. You'll have a bad time. About 15 minutes to try and tag this guy on X.
Actually, you know what? Blame Elon for that, because before he owned the company, I got Papa Boner got locked. I don't know why. I didn't post anything bad or anything. Maybe they just figured that was a bawdy type of name. So the prudes, before Elon bought it, just blocked it. So then I reversed it. So I'm at Boner Papa on X. And by the way, back at Nuclear Herbs, obviously you guys know that he is the go-to guy for everything legal. He's got his finger on the pulse of all the legislations that are popping up and will probably continue to pop up against our community, against our assets, against our founder, whatever it is. Nuclear Herbs is the go-to man. He's our legal beagle. I'm just Smeagol.
I will do my best to keep everybody informed. But please feel free to tag me. I know everybody does, but feel free to tag me if something new comes out, like Travinsky's post this morning about 1960.
Yes.
I'm happy to take a look at it. Thank you very much.
Before you go, Nuclear Herbs and Papa Boner give you an opportunity to say anything bullshit. I keep hearing, and maybe you could set the record straight on this too, regulatory clarity for HEX. Is that at face value accurate? Do we have regulatory clarity based on the what the SEC case finalized? Okay,
I'm going to give you this is a slightly longer answer than you're going to want, but it's okay. I'm going to give it to you anyway. With respect to PHEX, it was an airdrop. I think we have complete regulatory clarity on it. Period. It's not, that wasn't even involved in the suit against Richard, because it was only EHEX that was involved in that suit. Just like currently in South Carolina, the only crypto at issue in that lawsuit is Ethereum EHEX. So, at this point, they're asking the court there in South Carolina to declare it a security under South Carolina state securities laws and under the federal laws. So could that still happen? Yes. Is it going to have a real big effect on any of us? I seriously doubt it. However, as I briefly mentioned on Maddie's stream a couple of days ago, this may wind up needing to be a community-driven mail-in campaign, if you will. I suggest that everybody here go over to Grok or Perplexity or ChatGPT or whatever and type in something along the lines of, hi, there's a lawsuit happening and the class representative does not represent my interest or the interest of the most of the class. What are our options? Can I mail in a letter? Can I whatever, and then get your answer. If you can always ask, AI to generate you a template that it thinks would work. Feel free to post them on, in a reply to any of my posts on the matter, and I'll put something up as well. But let's crowdsource this and see what we get. Because I have thoughts on the matter, but I'd like to see what everybody else comes up with as well. And I think, a mail-in campaign may be the best way to go. I'm not sure, but judges have to do an independent analysis of whether or not to certify a class and whether or not the person purporting to represent the class does actually represent the class. And if we have 100,000, 100,000, 100, 1,000, 100,000 hexagons mailing letters to the court saying, hey, this guy does not represent my interests. He's pursuing a legal strategy that's completely adverse to my interests. Whatever the case is, however you feel about it, the court's going to have to consider that. And then not to mention the fact that there are serious due process issues with certifying a class of people overseas where they're probably not going to get proper notice, an opportunity to appear and state their objections. So we have a lot of hexagons from overseas. And, if you're going to ask AI for a domestic letter, ask AI to give you an international letter. Say, I'm changing my position here. I live in the UK or in Germany or in Australia or whatever like that. What does my letter look like to the court? And have it draft that. And we'll take a look at them and, we'll put together, I think whatever people think is the best strategy, we'll just go with. We'll crowdsource it.